All right, let's talk playoff race number one of round three. There's only 4 races left of the Cup Series before we crown a champion, which is crazy. Feels like we just recorded the Daytona 500 DFS video yesterday, and now it's almost the end of the year. So if you've been watching us for that long, thank you for joining us. If you're new, welcome. Subscribing to the channel means a lot. Liking definitely helps with the YouTube algorithm as well. But let's talk about the race preview and initial thoughts for this one. They're at a 1.5-mile track, so that means they're back in the 550 horsepower package. It's still in the playoffs. There's only 8 drivers left. We just eliminated 4 of them. If you win one of the next 3 races, it automatically locks you into the Phoenix race, assuming you are a playoff driver. If you're looking at lap data, you want to look at the 550 horsepower tracks that we've been at, mainly the 1.5s. And if you're going deeper than that, Texas is a low tire wear track. So those would be kind of the tracks that I would look at. And they also ran the All-Star race here earlier in the year, but keep in mind that was a completely different, like even lower horsepower package. It was like 450 or something that they were trying. So I wouldn't really use that as a data point, but I think this race should be relatively green. I don't really expect there to be a lot of cautions. I think restarts will be pretty wild, might get kind of chaotic at the end of the year, like we've seen with some of these races. But those are some of the things that we are keeping in mind and some of the thoughts that we have when we are going into our driver by driver breakdown and playing that narrative out in our head is how can these drivers be optimal for us this weekend. So we'll start with you this time, Coop, because we started with Rich for the Xfinity series. Why don't you walk us through the top price range up there?
Sure. I think the decision you have to make is, does Kyle Larson dominate the race like we've seen at many races this year, or does somebody else lead a bunch of laps? If you think he's going to dominate and come away with the win, Kyle Larson's an easy plug-in. And I think he's going to dictate how the rest of your line goes as well. If you don't think that he leads laps, and you still have that salary left over, then I actually don't mind any of those other drivers as a GPP pivot, because I think at that point you're going pretty GPP. I think Kyle Larson will be high owned this week. Kevin Harvick obviously is the safest of those plays. He plays differential. He's got a pretty good history at Texas, and this is his best package this year. So he does have a lot of upside, but again, he hasn't been having his best year either. And as the most expensive driver, that makes me a little hesitant to play him unless I'm playing a line that's a little more GPP. And then I don't mind Truex or Elliott. I think they're more GPP plays as well. But I don't mind the plays in a cash line, and in most of my lines, I will start the line with Larson.
Yeah, I agree. I probably will be playing Larson this week, just like I play him every week. Starting on the pole, his ownership will definitely be higher because most people tend to play the pole sitter. Like Coop said about Harvick, he's probably better in lineups where you think Larson is going to dominate the whole race, just because if Larson is dominating the whole race, he's going to be eating up all the dominator points, which means you're going to need guys that are getting you all the place differential points to help move your line up to the top. I do like Chase Elliott this week. Chase has been running pretty well. Hendrick as a whole has been great all year. I think he actually might come in a little under-owned just because of the Harvick place differential points up there at the top and Kyle Larson starting on the pole. So he could come in a little under-owned, and he definitely has dominator potential. We've seen him lead a bunch of laps before. So I'm a little lower on Truex than Cooper is. He's probably a good GPP play this week, but he just doesn't seem to run as well on the 1.5. He's better on the short tracks. Those are my opinions for the top guys.
Yeah, I'm just locking in Larson. I'm just playing him, and then really it comes down to who I want to play Larson with. Whether that's a Chase Elliott, a Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, William Byron, Kevin Harvick. Like, there's a lot of potential plays for you out there to pair Kyle Larson with. It just kind of comes down to who you feel the most confident with in that narrative that we were talking about. Like Coop was saying, if you think Larson runs away with this race, then you just play, high finishing potential and place differential guys. If you think it's a multi-dominator race, then I wouldn't play Kevin Harvick. You have to pair him with, maybe Denny Hamlin, maybe Kyle Busch, William Byron. Like, you got to play another potential dominator. I don't think Harvick is going to get out front and lead any laps. Might pick up some fast laps during the race, but getting out front is unlikely. So some other guys who I think have some good potential to get out front and lead you some laps would be Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch, and William Byron. Those would probably be my three favorite plays outside of the Chase Elliott play. I think he's in that category as well. If I had to pick one, probably either going to be Hamlin or Byron for me. I think Byron is a safer play, but he doesn't have the same upside that Denny Hamlin has. I think Byron is a good place differential play with those 12 points, but I think Denny Hamlin has the better potential to get out front and rack up all the dominator points that are available, because there's over like 300 laps, I think, for this race. So there's a lot of dominator points up for grabs. And if you're not scoring those dominator points, your line isn't going to be optimal. So, or isn't even going to get a cash basically. So it's really Larson and then who you pair Larson with. But what about you, Coop? Who would be your favorite play to pair with Larson in the 9K range?
Well, I think there's a couple different ways of going about it, and there's several points I'd like to make. First of all, Byron and Bowman are starting 6 and 8 spots back from Chase, which is on Team Hendricks. They've all kind of had a really good year. With that being said, that they have that extra PD, neither of them are in the playoffs. So does that mean that they're going to run, try any less? I don't think so. So I still prefer them over Chase. However, if you take that playoff and you think it does make a difference, maybe you jump up to Chase as your second Hendricks driver, as opposed to doing Byron and Bowman if you want multiple. Also, I think if you fade Larson, then you have, I will personally either play Hamlin or Busch. If Larson doesn't lead a bunch of laps and loses the lead early, I think it's going to be one of those JGR cars that passes him. And behind them are Blaney, Logano, and Keselowski. And I'd be really surprised if Team Penske, one of those drivers, takes an early lead in this race and leads a lot of those early laps. So if somebody takes over Larson early, I think it's going to be either Hamlin or Busch. And I really like those three plays right there, Hamlin, Busch, and Byron. Those are by far my favorite out of this 9K range, and I'm pretty even on all of them. But again, if you fade Larson, I really like Hamlin and Busch in those fade lines.
Yeah, I agree with you guys on this range. I actually really like Alex Bowman this week. For some reason, just got a feeling that this is one of those Alex Bowman weeks where he just doesn't do anything the whole race and then has a good restart at the end and ends up in the optimal lineup. That's just my opinion, but I'll probably be overweight on Alex Bowman this week. But if we drop on down to the 8K range here, I like Kurt Busch. He's starting outside of the top 15, which means he's a good play this week because he offers a lot of place differential. Brad K is definitely a GPP play this week, in my opinion. We haven't seen him run super great, basically ever since the announcement that he was going to Roush Fenway. So he's definitely a more GPP play for me this week, starting 7th. He's got some dominator potential, maybe not as much as the guys above him, which is probably why he's priced where he's at. And then Ross Chastain starting 25th. He offers you a lot of place differential. We've seen him run really well all year. I got no problems with Ross, even at that price.
Yeah, the interesting thing with this slate is as soon as you drop below the 7K range, like there's a lot of plays down here that I don't really like, that I don't really feel confident about. So like we were kind of talking about in the Xfinity series, it might make sense to grab a lot more of these kind of 7, 8K, 9K drivers instead of going all the way up and grabbing multiple 10K drivers and then have to dip all the way down, just because I think a lot of these guys can score really well. So some 8K drivers that I like that I think Rich touched upon. My two favorites would be Kurt and Brad there. Kurt Busch starts further back than we normally have seen him. He won a race this year at the 550 horsepower package track. So I think that is interesting. And I think Brad Keselowski is a good GPP play as well. He doesn't have this kind of same place differential play that Kurt does, but you never know. Like, he's still a playoff driver, and getting a potential, dominator upside potential play in your line at $8,500, I think is definitely, in play for me this weekend. Just kind of depends on how risky you really want to be and how many lines potentially you might be building. We'll drop down to or do you want to add anything else there, Coop, before you drop down?
No, I like the two Chip Ganassi cars there, and Kurt Busch and Ross Chastain, and I don't have much interest in the others. Moving on down, Chase Briscoe has raced really well this year for Stewart Haas Racing. As the season's gone on, I don't want to say really well. He had a really rough start, but he seems to be getting better and better. And I wouldn't be surprised if he puts in a good week and sneaks into a top 15, and it goes overlooked. So I don't mind him. Austin Dillon won here last year, so I think he's a great play. Starting 15th, I think some people won't think that's enough PD, but I don't mind it at all. And then Stenhouse, I like a lot. I think out of everybody in this range, he offers the most place differential with that same finishing potential as Briscoe and Dillon have. Maybe Dillon slightly higher since he did win here. And then I'm not as interested in Ryan Newman, but man, when he's starting 31st, he should move forward. So I don't think he has the finishing potential that some of these other drivers have, but he's certainly got more place differential.
Yeah, I agree. I think my two favorite plays in this range are probably Austin Dillon and Ricky Stenhouse. I agree with Jason. Ryan Newman has burned me so many times this year from playing him when he's starting deep in the field. I just, for some reason, can't bring myself to play him anymore, which sucks considering this might be his last year. But really like Austin Dillon, we've seen him run inside the top 12 all year, just about every race. He just seems to cruise around there. And then Ricky Stenhouse is entirely too cheap for his starting spot, in my opinion. Should be up around the 8K spot. He should be able to run inside the top 15, no problem.
Yeah, and then as soon as we get below Newman, it gets difficult. I really like Tyler Reddick a lot. I think he is an interesting GPP play. He's been really fast as of late. Almost got his first win last weekend. He was definitely in contention. So I like both the RCR cars. And then just from a safety standpoint, I think they're both going to be high owned, but grabbing either Stenhouse and or Newman is a good way to go. And if I can potentially build a line where I don't drop down below Newman, I think that's interesting. But some other potential guys to consider if you do have to drop down. One would be, I think, Bubba Wallace, just because of the equipment that he's in. Starts 18th, so he should probably ride around there, and that'll work out, for his price. And the only other play that kind of interests me, if you need the punt, would be Corey LaJoie. This is a 550 horsepower package, so I don't love rostering LaJoie. I don't think he has a ton of upside, but he can't really hurt you starting that far back. And if you don't play LaJoie, like, who else are you going to play? Like, you want to play Alfredo over him or McDowell, or, it's not really a weak to ugly punt either. So it's just a lot of the value, I think, this week is tough. So I think really Wallace and LaJoie are really the two potential options that I'm considering. But is there anyone else that besides those two, or even someone else that I even talk about in either of those ranges that you think might be of interest this weekend?
For me, I actually don't mind Eric Jones. He's been running around the 21st position every week. I can see him moving up inside the top 18 or finishing around 18th, and being at $6,600 with the limited value this week, he could easily end up in the optimal lineup, in my opinion. So I'll probably have a little bit of Eric Jones, but if I'm going below 7K, I'm probably dropping all the way to Corey LaJoie just to save as much salary as possible.
I'm not a big fan of anybody in these two ranges, and honestly, I think I'm going to make the rest of my line and just see what I got left and click the button. I think they're all very even with where they start and where they could finish. I don't see much differentiating any driver here. Corey LaJoie starts a little further back, and he's a little cheaper than the others, so I do not mind that. And Bubba obviously has some momentum right now, so I don't mind that. But the rest of them, I think you're just hoping that they ride around and that your other drivers really score you the points that you need to take down the tournament or win your cash game.
Cool. So that'll do it for the Cup Series at Texas. Thank you guys for tuning in. Any questions, you can hop over on our Twitter page. It's at FastCarsFM. Hit us up over there. We'll help you up with any lineup questions you might have, or you can just drop them down in the YouTube comments below. But best of luck this weekend, and we will catch you next time.